Thank you all for being here for session one to listen to Giambatista his talk today. Joyce Drew, president of CCB, is here to introduce. Thank you.
It is such a delight to be here, both people who are here in the room and people that are joining us virtually. And in a previous session, when Dave asked how many people drove through snow this morning out of the library, the work field, Randolph was all covered. And we got down into the lower part and then we came into Killington, because again, so I think snow is coming, and I think that's gonna make many mountains and Vermont's economy so happy. So, but thank you again. I am Joyce Judy, and I serve as president of the Community College of Vermont. And I think, as probably everyone here in this room knows, that CCB and Vermont State University are the two colleges that make up the Vermont State Colleges, or Vermont State University and CCB make up the Vermont State College system. And what is so important, and I and Dylan is such an example of this, is that, I often say that CCD is the broad end of the funnel. We help people who may not have ever imagined that they were going to go to college, or for whatever reason, this is CCD provides an open entree for them to get started in higher education. But what is so important, we also know that so many of the students who started CCD aspire to something well beyond what we can provide. We provide an associate degree. Vermont State University provides a bachelor's degree, and so for so many of our students, they start with us and they transfer to Vermont State University, and that's what makes our system unique, and that's what makes our system really strong. So Dylan is a prime example of how this all works, and now I'm going to quote a few things that you have said to me over the past. So Dylan took a very unusual path to get where he is today. We were talking on the way down because he grew up in this area, and he said, I visited this building. He said, I might even have been thrown out of this building a few times in my past. And I think Dylan would also say that his high school experience was he was struggling as a student for whatever reasons, not because he wasn't couldn't do the work, but there were other things that were attractive to him. So he ended up dropping out of high school at age 16. And he said he worked a lot of odd jobs, played in a band, did a lot of things that were of interest to him, but didn't lead him very far beyond the more immediate. But then I noticed about Dylan is truly a student at his heart and at the core. And he eventually found his way to CCD here in Vermont. But this time the school was different. Dylan came back with a purpose. He came back and was highly motivated. And he was incredibly successful. He liked his classes, he liked his instructors, he gained confidence in every class he took. And he also discovered a passion for history. That probably if someone said that to him when he was in 9th or 10th grade, probably would have been, I don't think so. But it's time and place is so important. So he finished his associate degree at CCD in 2010, and then he transferred to Johnson State College, which is now Vermont State University, Johnson, where he earned his bachelor's degree. And he took that education and have gone on to serve some incredible leadership roles in Vermont. He served in the Vermont legislature as a representative. He was also an outreach and financial literacy director for the Vermont State Treasurer's Office. And he's currently the director of public affairs for Vermont Gas, one of the largest public utilities in Vermont. And I should also mention that he served as a trustee for both Vermont State Colleges. So not only did he experience the education as a student, but also served on the board of trustees. Dylan has been an amazing champion of the Vermont State Colleges, of CTV, and also of Vermont State University. And we are incredibly grateful for his support. And with that, Dylan, I will let you take it away.
Thanks, Joyce. Good, so I need to set a timer such that we don't run over. As Joyce alluded to, I've actually raised my share of hell here. Here goes here. I'm gonna put on this timer so I don't get in trouble here. I don't want Jess carrying me away. My name is Dylan. You've heard that. I hope by the end of this thing, we'll all be on a first name basis. And you know, it's actually funny. I don't get to do as much of this anymore. I sort of retreated into the shadows of a career. And that's great, it's fun, and actually it's great to experience some success here as I approach the big year of 39. So I'm sort of in this midlife moment evaluating what's going on, how I got here. So this is fun. But it's been a while since I've sort of been on a stage like this. I do it from time to time, but not often. Joyce noted I'm a recovering politician. She also noted, speaking to it, I'm a recovering rock and roller. So I actually had the opportunity to do so many odd things in my life. You know, I've done, when I was in public office, I do really serious things, you know, tour the state, go talk with folks. At one time I flew in a helicopter to Fort Drum and got to address troops with our National Guard leadership over in New York. I mean, these are really interesting experiences that one gets to do in public office. And I can tell you just as interesting, about 10 years before that, I once smashed a guitar on stage, and it was equally as joyful for me, and it was just a remarkable experience. I think about those quite a bit. But talking today with folks online in the room, you know, I wanted to chat with about community and collaboration. Really builds off of some of what Mike was saying upstairs. Vermont is a really unique place, and it's a unique place in which the scale allows us to have an outsized impact. There are opportunities to do that, even if obstacles stand in your way. Joyce also stole some of my thunder on my bio, but this is great. I love it because it sets it up nicely. You know, for me, I grew up in this area. I've already told you I was a hellraiser. Joyce is right. I'm pretty sure my friend and my friends and I, who were a band of hellions, were thrown out of this building once for disrupting a radio. Or something that was going on, like a radio broadcast. We probably had skateboards and we're making fun of us. Those were my former. And I grew up not far from here in a little town called. Do we have anyone from home for here? So there's oh, there they are. Boy in the Boots still there?
Again,
Boy in the Boots still there?
vandalized.
Was it?
There.
It's always been vandalized. I never did it. I can assure you that. I grew up in a little town and I went to school there. And Joyce alluded to the fact that I had some challenges in school. I had some trauma when I was a kid, and for me, it really led to something where I would go to school and I felt very confined. And I guess you'd call them panic attacks. I got to a point where I said, I don't want to be here. And instead of telling my teachers, typically what I would do, I would ask to be excused. I'd sneak out of the hall, I'd look for the exit, and I'd run through it. And I could run pretty quick in those days. There was some woods not far away. I just go to the woods, right? This is real stuff. You can get away with this in the 90s. I remember one time I did this, and there were flashing lights down on my house when I came out of the woods, and I said, "Oh, I'm in trouble." Right? It's what happens when you're 8, 9 years old, growing up in Wallingford. You got some challenges. Now, those series of me running away, they didn't stop. They continued for years. I was not going to school often. I was truant quite a bit. And my teachers over the course of the years didn't quite know what to do with me. It got to the point where I lost even more interest in what. Now, the good news is I did have hobbies. Joyce also alluded to this. Music for me was a big one. My father managed a record store in the 70s, and he had all these imported records and LPs, really odd stuff. So I got into rock and roll and bizarre imported music. For me, it was really punk rock, which I guess fits with the whole Hellion thing. I, at the same time, had this real interest in American history, and for some reason, the presidency. Now, it might be that not far from here, if you go up to Plymouth Dodge, you can stand over Calvin Coolidge's grave, and there he is. He's very accessible, right? Well, these things just for some reason sparked my interest. So punk rock and presidents, I don't know, makes no sense. Right there with you. Well, the reason I share all this is that over a period of years, it was pretty clear I was not serious. And the school didn't know what to do with me. They put me on a 504 plan. They tried to give me tutors. I did finish classes through my sophomore year, but as soon as I could, I took up that pen and I signed and I dropped out of school. All right, well, what do you do when you're 16? Now, fortunately, my folks were at their wits' end with me. They were smart. They said, you got to do 2 things. First of all, you should probably get some people, or something. And somehow, I honestly, I was looking at the transcript of my GED. I don't know how I passed it, but I did. I got a GED when I was 17. They also said you gotta work some jobs, right? Which was good. It's probably good for me to try to get a work ethic, because I was a bit of a bum. Well, all right, so I started working some jobs, and I worked all the jobs you can imagine. I washed dishes at the Seward's restaurant, not far from here. I worked for a home builder in Mendon. Did every job you can imagine, and many of them I didn't do for long. So there's a pattern. Now, funny story here in Rutland area that I got into, I played in a band, and this band wasn't very good, and I'm proud of it, but nevertheless, I was 17 years old, I'd taken up drums a few years before, and I got pretty good, and I could write a pretty catchy song. Well, one day this producer from New York City found the band on MySpace. MySpace was like tip-top, right? And he reached out to us, and for some reason, he said, I want to record you guys. You're a bunch of knuckleheads. I don't know what he was thinking, but this was the heyday of pop punk records on the radio, Blink-182, all these people selling out arenas. There was a lot of money. Well, long story short, he gets us down to the studio, they record a song. Now, as these things went, I didn't stick with it. I left this band after a little while. People were driving me nuts. Well, a few months would go by, after I'm out of this band, I get a phone call from one of the members. He says, you idiot. You left the band. We've been offered some sort of award in a contest from VH1. This was a precursor, sort of a companion to MTV. He said, there's this guy, this actor, I didn't know who he was, Jack Black, in a movie called School of Rock. He's a pretty big actor. And this song that I wrote was the winner of some contest for this movie he was doing called School of Rock. And I thought, well, this is weird. And they tried to get me back to the band. Well, I didn't do it. I didn't take that opportunity. Maybe I could have. Who knows? Maybe I'd be on dance when it started now. Who's to say? But the reason I bring this up is there's a pattern of me trying to pursue music, working on jobs, not sure what I'm going to do. And this is where choice comes off. It was really through a series of unfortunate events that I landed at community college. There used to be a campus right over here in Rutland. It was before the big building. I did a semester there in 2006, which is about 20 years ago. I was about 18 years old, maybe 19 years old. I ended up doing a couple semesters, and things were going pretty well. But lo and behold, every so often, a band would come along, and I'd go on tour with them and get in trouble. Now, I got a couple semesters in, and I was up in Burlington. There used to be a campus in Burlington for CCD, and I started taking classes. This was the spring of 2006. And I was actually having a pretty hard time. I think I was imbibing too much, maybe having a little too much fun, and definitely not paying attention to my studies. And I got to about February, and a band gave me a call from Northampton, Massachusetts. They said, Dylan, we want you down here. You got to come play music. Well, I left, and I didn't drop my classes. Not a good idea. When you're young, you don't know where you're going, and you have to pay for that. And so I had 4 Fs that semester. Okay, well, what do you do with that? Well, as the pattern goes through my life at this time, I came back and I said, gee, I gotta go back, I gotta get back. And I was feeling inspired because I still had this intense interest in American history. In fact, if you look at my GED when I was 17, and if you look at my lowest score on that test, it's my writing skills. And I started reading a lot of history around that time and thereafter. And I became a pretty good writer. A good speaker at the time too. I don't know that I'm any good anymore, but I became a great writer. And so in 2008, when I went back to school, I wrote a letter to the community college. And I don't know who it was directed to. It might have been Yasmin.
Or might have been Yasmin, and then someone became Johnson.
Well, I wrote this letter. And I was doing it because I had to see. I was going back to say, please, fix these grades for me. Because here I am, a high school dropout. What do I have? I never took a standardized test. If I did, it wouldn't look good. It was really college for me. And I knew it. And so I wrote this letter in 2008, and I was excited about what was going on in the country. There was a feeling of political involvement a lot of young people had at the time. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to get involved with this. I'm going to try to go into public service. And I recognized in Vermont, there were opportunities to change lives because I had met every state representative, every congressperson we ever had. I remember bumping into Bernie Sanders once at the mobile station in Wallingford. And my friends were there, and we all had our skateboards, and he posed for a picture with us. I mean, this state is accessible when it comes to public service. It's just a part of our community. Well, I wrote this letter, and I found it the other day. Joyce was kind enough to pull this out for me. And I think it's really interesting. Keep in mind, I had 2 semesters under my belt. I was having a hard time. I was about 20 years old. I would say I was lost. And I wrote, I said, I wish to continue my education beyond CCD and focus on history, public policy, or law. Seeing as I did not complete high school and never taken a standardized test, my grades at CCB are the sole proving ground to demonstrate this knowledge. Now, I wrote that. That was years ago. I was at an all-time low. But I bounced back. And it's because, in part, CCB wrote me back a few months later and said, "Dear Dylan, I am approving your request for amelioration." I got a second chance from the community college. It's one of many second chances that I've had. I don't think this is a typical story. I think that folks in a small state like Vermont get these opportunities all the time. But whether or not we take them is really a question of circumstance, maybe a question of luck, maybe a question of judgment. But it's these communities that are available to us when it comes time to see what you're doing. And CCB gave me a second shot. Now, I will tell you, I continued my education. I did it at the Burlington campus of CCB. I did it at the Winooski campus. I ended up earning a degree in December 2010. I did some preparatory classes. I had since I wanted to go up to Johnson, BTSU Johnson. And part of the reason I wanted to do that is because a bandmate many years before, while we were on tour in Virginia, he said to me, "There's a professor up at Johnson. You would love learning this guy. He knows everything about Vermont history. He knows about politics. He's actually in the state senate. This guy named Bill Doyle, who served for something like 60 years in the Vermont State Senate." Well, through the fog of whatever smoking those days in the tour band, I remember this. And I decided I would apply to go work on my bachelor's degree up at Johnson. And I was accepted. And I got a great scholarship. So some of that financial issue that maybe I had approved was in a better place. And so I went up to Johnson in the year 2011. And I enrolled in a history program, but I soon dropped that and went to a political science program. And it was at Johnson that I found these opportunities for experiential learning, for learning on the job, right? For getting credit for things like, interning down at the State House, even working on some campaign stuff. It was a lot of fun. It was an interesting time. And I was doing what I loved, and I was doing it with a lot of other folks who had similar experiences as mine, something that I could draw on. Now, why do I bring this up? Because it was those second chances, those pillars of the community that gave me the opportunity, right? I could still be washing dishes over at sports. I enjoyed that. Heck, I might do it. Like, I could make a living doing it. I would do it. But I found through my career ways that I could bring those experiences and try to help them. Straight out of Johnson in 2013, when I graduated, I got a job at the state working for the then state treasurer, Mike's predecessor, great person, Beth Pierce, who started her career in social services down in Massachusetts, and through her own great determination with her lowly bachelor's, just like me, became one of the best public finance experts in the country. In fact, Beth is no longer a state treasurer; she retired, but she still works with a national board that oversees the entire industry. That's some serious stuff. She was an incredible mentor, and this is where I am talking about mentors. I mean, in your career path, in what you do, finding a mentor who has the right values, who has an investment in you, someone that they see something in, but then also can help you through your struggle, can see you for what you bring to it, and can give you an opportunity to shape something that you're working on together. I mean, that's the type of mentor you want. And I was very lucky. Worked with her for about a year and a half, and then someone came knocking on my door one day, and that was the Speaker of the House here in Vermont, a guy named Shaq Smith. Really great guy, compassionate and caring guy from rural Vermont. And Shaq, he and I sat down. He was thinking about hiring someone new to be his chief of staff. We had a conversation. Look, I don't shy away from my backstory. I tell him about getting in trouble in this building and skateboarding and raising hell, because that authenticity, that grit, that experience is something that you don't hear in schools, right? So once again, I was able to bring those experiences forward, and I found a mentor who lifted that up, who thought it was something to celebrate, and maybe it would help with the constituent work that office did. And I gotta tell you, I'm gonna pause here for just a moment, because what I found when I was working in Montpelier at the State House was people with a lot of need, calling, with great frustrations. And this continues to this day, right? We're in sort of this new 21st era of politics and what's going on in the country. Well, I can tell you, folks, 10, 15 years ago, we're also upset. And they call and they need help. They might have an issue with health care, child, with accessing unemployment, I mean, any number of issues, and you're there as someone trying to not only put out the fires, but hopefully help them find a solution. Now, the reason I bring this up is because on the way down, I was thinking about someone who used to call me a lot in that office, who called everyone in the state, who had some significant challenges. And this person was disabled. They had had an injury that ended their career. They had developed addiction through that and the treatment they had received for the injury. And they were on hard times. And I can tell you, this person called that office several times a week. I remember this phone number. It's kind of like that old Tommy Two-Tone song, 8675309. This person's phone number is emblazoned in my mind. And I remember the name, and I remember where they were from. This person, almost every time they called, was threatening. They were struggling, they were having a hard time. And almost every time I listened, and I tried to work through it with them. Now, for a period of months, I thought that maybe this person was starting to listen more than the other. And that was good, because I felt we were developing. One day, I was at the State House, and a security person came up to me, and they said, "This person's here to see you with your boss." And they said the name. And I said, "Whoa, this is my friend from the phone, who recently hadn't been too happy with us." I said, "Okay." I turned the corner around a blind corner, and there was a person standing. That was the person who had called me all this time, because when he opened his mouth, I heard the voice. I said, "There it is." Now, I didn't know what was going to happen. But he reached out his hand to me, and he said, "I came all the way down here." In fact, I think he said, "I dragged my ass down here to shake your hand." Now, I did not tell you the story as a reflection on me or the patience I had with this person. I tell you the story because it's a story of community development, right? It's a story of how accessible things can be in a small state, but also the change that can happen if you're available, if you listen, and if you are willing to learn from those around you. The experiences that I had with classmates at CCD in particular, folks who had come from war-torn countries, Eastern Europe, Africa, folks who were having a hard time in Vermont, came from other places, they stuck with me. And when it came to apply them in my work, they were always there. And even to this day, I'm no longer in public service. I did 2 terms in the House of Representatives. I got enough of politics. I left office in 2021 when my term was up. Even now, I think about these things. I serve on a local board. Many of my colleagues, friends do. People who I went to school are doing these jobs. They're doing all sorts of things in communities. Like Mike said, they might work for a company, they might work with a nonprofit, they might work with government. There's all these opportunities. And you are able, in a small state, where people respect authenticity, where they respect that experience, where folks are able to share who they are and be received for their authentic self. In a state like that, you can make a big difference. And there's a place for that. And I think also something that Mike said upstairs that I've been reflecting on is we're entering this period of intense detachment, right? It's actually the responsibility involved in me is hard, but it's also the way that we communicate, the way that algorithms sort of dictate how we feel. Well, in small communities, you have the opportunity to get rid of the algorithm, just listen to folks, right? It doesn't matter where it is. It could be the pub in your town, the restaurant, the car wash, the social service provider, the government, be a business, wherever you are. That's where the real world is. And that community and connection is going to play an increasingly important. So as folks here today think about making a difference, think about how this fits the community and collaboration. I encourage you to think about how your own experiences can help others see themselves in what you're doing with them or for them. Yeah. There's an opportunity to collaborate, bring people into it. And I think that there are many career opportunities that translate. Vermont's a great place to do it. It's not without its faults. We're too small. We have a rapidly aging population. We have sounds like a ton of businesses about to sell off from a different generation. Those are all opportunities. And my hope is that as folks think about what's next, they recognize they can do whatever they want in the state. There's a huge opportunity. Doesn't mean you won't fail or have some setbacks, but you can grow. And that's worth a lot in this game. So I guess I'll leave it there. I'm not sure if that was coherent. I feel like I need some more coffee or something. Here we go. All right, what's next? What do we got? Someone else seeing this thing?
So we do have just a comment from the chat that happened early from Ashley. As we're sharing kind of your educational journey, Ashley just wrote that this is her path moving forward for spring 2026 as well.
Oh, great. Great. Yeah, I'd like to hear more about that. I mean, you know, there's so many interesting service opportunities in Vermont, and they don't need to be listed, right? I gotta tell you that the higher up chain you go, not to throw shade at my friends in public service, but you find more egos the higher up chain you go. Doesn't mean you can't find them at local level too. I chair a lowly board of civil authority in the city. I live in Essex Junction, and I didn't want to chair it. But when we turned into a city, we seceded from the town we were in a few years ago. It made no sense, but we seceded and became a city. And they set up this board of city authority. The governor had to appoint a bunch of justices of the peace. Well, they threw me over there. Nice of them. But then they elected me the chair. I don't think they could do this work. But I gotta tell you, over a period of years, we've worked to try to put some structures around a process. When we were under the town, we weren't doing it too well. I was on that one too. And we put some structures around it, little by little. I think we're making progress. I mean, these opportunities to serve at the local level, they're really important. Also, there's huge vacancies. You know, whatever you're doing, career path, you can get involved at local level, join a board, maybe the zoning board, the planning board. These things don't sound exciting, but I gotta tell you, when Amazon comes to town trying to build a warehouse like they did up in Essex, it gets pretty exciting for people on the boards, and things get hot and heavy quickly. Yeah.
I very much enjoyed your presentation, but you did say you were recovering and rock and roll, but surely you hadn't been the drums.
Drums and guitar. No, I have not. And I'll let you know a little secret. I'm going down to Albany, New York after this for a conference. So I work in the utility sector. That's companies keep the lights on or keep the home warm. We grew up in Northwest Vermont. Going to a conference in Albany after this. And I always bring a piece of gear with me. It's a great music shop down in Troy called Love of Fuzz. And if I get lucky, maybe I'll trade some. We'll see. This is like it's like my birthday or something. Yeah. Yeah, if you recognize how loud I'm speaking, part of that is probably hearing loss. So. Can't get that back.
I have a related question. Well,
Yeah.
first, thank you for your remarks. What was the name of your band here in Rutland?
You're not down. That's what I will tell you, when I was playing up in Burlington, this is also, there's all these interludes with music and things, and I've had some very odd ones. None, I would be remiss if I just let you think that I at all was a rock star, because I was not. I have scratched the guitar. But like I mean, our friends in the Burlington area, which for a time they were part of this really interesting multi-generational rock and roll story. In fact, the parents of this band, the band wasn't discovered until the late 2010s. They had lost record in the 70s. But no joke, this family is regarded as the first African American punk rock band in the 70s, and no one knew about that until they were found in the late 20s, I guess it was 2009. And they are now in the Smithsonian African American History Museum down in DC. This family, this band that I was sort of playing tribute to. Well, the reason I bring this up is that my dream when I got involved with music was I always thought I'd sort of flame out all of it and do something that I thought was important to me and then just stop, knock it off, because no one would stay in music for that long. And lo and behold, we got invited in our band because there's press that we got and this cool stuff that was going on about 15 years ago. We got invited to play at the Joey Ramone birthday bash in New York City at the Irving Plaza. It's the Fillmore Irving Plaza down in New York City. And I was excited because the Ramones are my all-time favorite band. And I get down there backstage, and there's all these washed-up celebrities. There was a Bebe Buell was her name. She was a 70s celebrity who was married to this 20 people in New York, including Steven Tyler, Aerosmith, all those people. And the reason I'm sharing this is that I turned the corner in this hallway, and who's standing there? It's quite a small fellow who was alive at the time. Tommy Ramone was like the drummer and producer of the Ramones. I mean, this is like my ultimate. I got to hang out with him. And at that point, I went, you know what? I don't need to do this music stuff anymore. I already met my what does it matter? That's when I decided to go back to school and really get going. That's about the time this amelioration went. It's funny. Yeah. I feel like I'm on topic. And I love the question. Yes.
Well, to bring it back to topic, I think there was a little band somewhere associated with one of the Vermont State Colleges that was around in the early 80s, and I was at UVM at the time, I think in 1983 or 4, they played a little cafeteria on UVM campus. I think it was called Fish.
I think that's right, yeah, the real. Whatever it's called, that's right, yeah, actually, when I was working for Shaq Smith, the Speaker of the House. He had done some of his shows at UVM, but he does not speak about them, so. Not sure.
So there are no more chat questions. Are there any questions or comments from the room? Anymore?
Gotta keep going, it's not a waste of time. I don't like that first drive.
I'll say,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'll say that I love the story, thank you for sharing that, around Montreal learning.
Oh, great, yeah.
So many people walk through my door with that same story about school. Try to help do, DC or.
Yeah.
Or they want to apply. It's really inspiring to see when you can point to someone and say, hey, I just did the same stuff you got, and they're doing great. So many of them are rejected, and for whatever reason, traditional schooling didn't work out for them. And that sounds like maybe it was an issue for you as well.
Yeah. You know, it's good that these GED programs around the state, you know, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
Sitting in GED. Do you know Dave?
Dave, no,
Yeah, he's a good guy. So one of the things I get to do now, so I work in utility settings, energy policy. And we're doing a lot around workforce right now, climate, these occupations, you know, that are going to be essential as increasingly electrification becomes the solution to transportation, thermal, other things. And so I get to work with them quite a bit. Work Vermont learning for folks from my
that's a branch of all this workforce development. So yeah, they have that end of it. It's pretty successful.
Yeah, that's excellent. Great.
And I'll say it's interesting to listen. My name is Peg Julie, I use her pronouns. I'm Vermont's Director of Trauma Prevention and Resilience Development. And I dropped out of college. I was okay in high school and stuff, but I dropped out of college thinking never to go back. And woke up one day, 15 years later, and decided I needed a degree. And was fortunate to stumble upon at that time Johnson State's Express Degree Program, which is how I got my bachelor's, and then I went on to get my master's and beyond, University of South Florida. But it was because of that step that I could make with full-time classes around a life that involved 3 children under the age of 5 and 4 foster daughters who were teenagers.
With that access.
Yeah, and it's like where I am now, where you're right, it's a small state, and I get to affect the entire state with the job of the legislature created.
It's great, and it's so important. But what you're saying sort of calls it out. I mean, even since I was in school, I graduated 2013, I was 26 at the time when I got my master's degree. The idea of an external degree program being decentralized, where you could take a remote course at CCD campus and then go and take some things up on the main campus, that was pretty revolutionary at the time. And I remember seeing it at the CCD site in Burlington and thinking, that's pretty neat. Well, now with distance learning and online learning, there's all these opportunities. But then there's also all these incredible hands-on opportunities where you can get training for a really rewarding career that's in demand in Vermont. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I could call out for anything. If I was doing anything at this point, I would go be an electrician or a plumber.
Yeah.
You know, do HVAC work or something, run a business. I mean, there's the opportunity. And I wired up my own house, so if it burns down, you know why. But I gotta tell you, like, there's a great rewarding career path with training where you can grow and be making big bucks in no time. And I'll tell you, one thing we need is more HVAC shops, and there's an opportunity for entrepreneurship there as well.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting to me is I was able to get my bachelor's in psychology and then move on towards school psychology, educational psychology, that kind of thing. And in another field where the demand is outstripping what we need, not only nationally, but specifically here in the state. And I see that every day because my job's in the Department of Health. So It's really interesting because I'm the only person there that's in a non-traditional degree path.
That's awesome.
And having been able to talk to that experience, I think has been really helpful in me. People start thinking about beyond your traditional, someone went to school for 4 years and went on. And that didn't work.
Yeah, I think we have our speaker.
Writing is not.
Great. You know, you're speaking to the versatility, right? When there's demand, you can be versatile. Used to be you had a degree in a vocation to get a job. Well, when things are in demand, you can probably build some skills outside of it, get a certification or something, you're ready to go. And depending on your experience, whether it be a lived experience or something you picked up through education or training, you may be the best candidate for the job, regardless if there's someone with a degree in the field, right? It's really a question of that versatility. Are you willing to flex? Are you willing to try different things? And do you have this sort of spirit of showing up, being there, working hard? I mean, those are essential things I kind of glossed over. But I found through my career and through the interactions I've had, it's people who show up, who really make that effort, who are available and seemingly indispensable. You know, they have huge opportunities. That's an incredible skill that I know employers do these days. Yeah.
So, giving the talk again, Wes McEntee, one part of put together is outlining the keys to success that I've discovered throughout my life. And I'm just kind of curious if you have some key points that you outline for yourself.
That's, I don't know. Well, mentors.
One of mine is
Yeah, I think finding a mentor who is a good person, successful at what they do, but sees the value in bringing someone under their group of people under their wing, recognizing that once you get these skills, you got to share them. That is far and away the most valuable thing I have had through my career. You know, folks who trust you, who are confidants, who don't treat you like an intern, but treat you like a colleague. And there are some incredible leaders in the state in all sorts of fields. And when you find that person, they're the ones you want to get right there. You want to be next to them. You want to show up because you want to absorb everything you can. And that's all it is. So I don't have a list. I'm not that organized over here, but I can tell you mentors are key. Yeah, good luck.
Dylan, do you have any closing remarks for your session?
Oh, I mean, look, we're in downtown. Well, started this by telling, I raised hell. You know, and so the reality is these things come from service. I don't think anyone gains anything from trying to cover up who they are. You know, you gotta just be true to what it is. And over a period of time, you will find that in a world where everything is kind of algorithms, and it's all driven by the most popular trend, these things are fleeting. They're not real. But when you're in a community, when you get to know people, when it's the simple things like saying hello to someone at the dump, or the transfer station, coffee shop, you really live it. And I do think that when we think about collaboration, when we think about community, that's more of an asset than it used to be. So the question is, when will small become something where we start developing and growing and applying to that, and make it replicable and something that would work for folks in Vermont. I think there's a trend moving that direction. I think we all are playing it. I think things like this are stepping in that direction as well. I think that's all I got, Jess.
Well, Dylan, thank you. It was such a pleasure listening to you speak, and you're such a wonderful speaker. I want to thank you for your contribution.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
I would like to take a picture of you and Joyce Judy if I'm allowed.
Well, yes, I mean, I've always.